Welcome back to episode number 17 of NFT World. I'm here with Legendary, as always, to wrap up the week gone by in the world of NFTs, as well as look forward to this new week, Monday, the 12th September. Legendary, I'll be seeing you soon in London this week. That's pretty cool.
Indeed. I'm flying out on Friday.
Friday for NFT business. Or business? How do you classify this stuff now? Is it NFT business or is it business without NFTs?
I think it's business. Like it's, such a part of my life that I'm not calling it NFT business anymore. It's just my business, I'd say.
Makes sense. What are you looking to do tourism wise while you're here? Will you be attending the Queen's funeral?
Probably not, but I was talking to you, before we started recording, and I was a bit shocked to see how much the hotel prices went up.
I was shocked. I just didn't think that was. I mean, it makes sense now, but
2 or triple X on most of the hotels that I've been looking at. They were like, "Hey, let's just triple the price for that weekend." And I'm like, "Cool."
That is crazy.
I do expect a pretty crowded weekend in London, seeing that all the hotel bookings and everything is going up. So I've only been to London once. I feel like I did a bit of, the touristy stuff, a couple of museums, walking around in the city of London, Westminster and all that kind, but not really got the true London experience yet. And this is what I'm kind of going for. Although it's going to be heavily, influenced by the Queen's funeral on the weekend.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult. I mean, obviously there are things that will be going on as normal, but there will be. I mean, I think Monday will be a bank holiday, so everything will potentially be closed.
Yeah, I heard that.
And then even
does it apply to restaurants and stuff like that as well?
I don't know in the center of London. Like it might be seen as disrespectful for people to stay open. So like the weekend just gone, they cancelled all the football, but but other sport did carry on. So it's like kind of people were making it up as they're going along. Some people did carry on, some people didn't carry on, and I suspect it might be a little bit like that next weekend, where some people will cancel because they think it's the right thing to do, and some people will be like, no, we still appreciate that it's a sad time, but we should probably carry on and cater for. I mean, actually, to be fair, if so many people are coming to London and the prices have gone up so much, they literally need things to stay open, right? So
yeah, there's got to be like the essential infrastructure for tourists, to get fed and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So I think you'll be safe and you'll be fed, so don't worry about that.
It's going to be a unique experience either way.
It will be. And another unique experience, I'm getting good at these transitions, a very unique experience into our first piece of news, the artifact transition, the artifact creation of a unique LeBron James NFT. So they have the Clone-X NFTs, which is a collection of 20,000 avatars, which has been around for a huge amount of time. We all know about those. They were very, very popular and very, very successful at the time. And what they did was they took one of these NFTs, which already existed in one particular form, and they updated the metadata in the last week to include a LBJ beard trait. So previously, this NFT did not have a beard, and now it does. I don't know if I'm looking at it now. I don't know if it used to have the crown as well, and it didn't have the crown before, but I'm not 100% sure. But basically, they definitely added this LeBron James beard, and it's split people down the middle as to whether this is an acceptable thing to do. Like if you own an NFT, is it okay for the owners to just update the metadata and change the thing? What do you think about that?
It's a very a difficult question, to be honest, because there's like a lot of implications, you know. Like on the one hand, you expect to buy an NFT and to look the way that it looks like and to be the NFT that you bought. On the other hand, there also might be reasonable, you know, grounds to upgrade or to change the metadata, but you still bought a product expecting it to look the way that it looks like. And I feel it gets even trickier with endorsements of this sort. Like personally, you know, LeBron, great athlete. If I had a Clone-X, I wouldn't mind if I get the King LeBron beard trade. But I think it also led to speculation, especially if there's an event later this week with Nike and Drake, Ronaldo attending. Like, I don't know, if you just don't like Drake and you get the Drake Clone-X that you never bought, I feel like that's a bit, you know, kind of intrusive to your own personal collection. So, and I don't know if people are aware of this. Like, was the metadata frozen on blockchain level or wasn't? Like, I don't know if, just to paraphrase it, I don't know if people are generally aware of the current status and state of their NFTs on an individual level as to whether it is an NFT that has its metadata frozen on blockchain level or not. So I feel like there's not enough awareness around this topic.
So I think one clarification is that this was an NFT held by the Artifact account. So they already owned it. They bought it from someone quite some time ago, probably because they had this in mind and they thought it was a good one for him to get one day. And once they had bought it from someone, and I think it was bought for like 42 ETH, like ages ago, and they've obviously updated it with him in mind now. So I think the idea with these things is that they'll be able to create unique one-of-ones for their most valuable players, athletes on their roster by buying one on the public market. So it was not like kind of affecting anyone in that respect. And then they create a unique trait for their star athletes. So in that respect, it's completely unique. It doesn't really affect anyone else's NFT because they've bought it and then they are going to kind of style it in a very unique way. However, it does. I mean, the criticism has been, I don't know, it feels a bit corporate, doesn't it? And I think one of the things people didn't like was that once you buy a collection or you set a collection, you think that that's how it's going to be. That's what you're making your decisions on. Now there's this additional layer into the mix where, well, you know, if you're willing to change the traits for this thing, are there any other circumstances where you might be willing to change the traits? So I guess it's a bit less reliable on what Artifact are able to do now.
2 points to add to that. Like, first of all, it then is still part of the same collection. And if they do more one-on-ones of this style, I feel like it gets more difficult to kind of explain that collection. Like, I mean, Nike has a lot of athletes. And if they just do like 100 or 200 of those athletes one-of-ones, you then suddenly have a collection with, you know, 20K Clone-X, and then you have 200 famous real persons in that, but Clone-X are created as avatars to be, you know, representing you in a Web3 way and not being, you know, LeBron, Drake, Ronaldo, or whoever. So I feel like this makes the whole collection a bit weird. It gets too much. And the second thought was, if you do this like 100 or 200 times, you're going to have an influence on the general collection, because if you start, you know, changing metadata of individual ones, that adds up, and it might change the entire distribution of rarity and change the allocation of the rarity of other traits. So I don't know, like I think it's obviously super cool and impressive that they get those people to be part of the NFT project or like visually represented. But I feel it's a bit weird if it's part of the main collection. And just reminded me because literally before I started talking, I got my OK Bears merchandise pack, and they did a similar thing. They had a one-of-one LaMelo Ball NBA player, OK Bear, but they auctioned it off as a one-of-one, which is separate to their main collection. I feel like it's like, for my personal taste, again, this is all personal preference, I think it's just more structured or cleaner if that lives in a separate collection and not suddenly becomes part of the main collection. In a similar vein, I think it would be weird, just at one more thought, if I'm looking at the Bored Apes and suddenly there's Justin Bieber, Snoop Dogg, Eminem as a Bored Ape in the Bored Ape collection, and not, it just would feel weird to me.
Well, that was exactly my point. Like, it's not the first time where celebrities have bought in or been brought into an NFT project. But when the Bored Apes, when those celebrities you just mentioned bought into the Bored Ape project, they just bought an existing NFT. It wasn't amended for them. It wasn't changed to look more like them. And in some ways, maybe that's the point of these collections, because they're not supposed to look just like you. They're not supposed to be digital representations of you. Literally, they're meant to have like weird, quirky traits that might not be exactly you, but might express some different side of you. So there was no amendment to the metadata when the Bored Apes had those influx of influential people. And I think, I mean, this should still be very, very good publicity for Artifact and Nike around this, but I guess it's just not in line with the kind of Web3 ethos and culture. But I don't necessarily think that's a bad decision broadly. Like, for everyone, normal people who are outside of our bubble will look at this and think, oh, that's cool. And they probably won't dwell on it too much. It's just the people within the space getting a little bit upset.
I agree. I think like from a mass consumer perspective, it's way easier to explain it that way. Because, I don't know, if we look at Snoop Dogg and his Bored Ape, and he, created like merchandise around his ape, changed his traits a bit. I think Paris Hilton did the same with her ape as well. So they altered their ape that they owned in a way to visually represent them better. And I feel like this is more difficult to explain. So, because if you're like from an outside NFT perspective and you're explaining, okay, this is an NFT, unique token, authenticity, digital, scarce good, and then someone buys it but changes it arbitrarily to match their own preference and liking, it's just more difficult to explain what the value of the NFT is, as if in Clone-X's case, where you just take the NFT, change it, it still lives on the blockchain, it looks like LeBron, and it's an easier story for the mass consumer market, and also like probably for the average Nike consumer who is not obviously into NFTs. Exactly. Way easier to digest, and looking from that point of view, it might make more sense. Yeah.
And I think zooming out, most people will not be aware of Clone-X, its inception, how it started, how it adjusted, how they then changed some metadata, blah, 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 blah. They're just going to find out that LeBron James has this NFT that kind of looks like him now, and it's part of this bigger collection, and you can buy one too. Like, that's going to be the main experience of the next potential Nike buyer of an Artifact Clone-X. So I do understand why people are kind of upset about it, but at the same time, I don't think it's a material difference. Although maybe one of the reasons people are just so upset and sensitive at the moment is that these NFTs, after being at a high of around 17, 18, 19 ETH, are now at 5 ETH. So I think the market in general is just in a pretty sensitive time at the moment, where they're not hugely happy for any kind of material changes to their precious NFTs if they've just shedded like 80-90% in value.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's also important that we, don't forget to take this perspective, zoom out, and try to view things a bit outside of our own bubble, which is difficult because we spend whole day in it, right?
Exactly. Something which is not shedding 80-90% of value, at least not yet, are the ENS digits, which continue to sell pretty well. So for the people who still do not know what the ENS digits are, I think we have spoken about them before many months ago. And as is usually the case, we speak about really interesting, potentially profitable schemes and take no action, as far as I know. So the Ethereum naming service, which is what ENS stands for, is when you can put in a name and it will then you purchase that name, kind of like a domain. So instead of having a website, you can have your name .eth instead of .com, and that can operate as your wallet address. So you can send funds to it. And often people use it as their Twitter name as well, for example. But one big trend for this is that people started buying and owning short digits, and the minimum number that you can have is 3. So numbers such as 123.eth, 427.eth, they became this whole narrative about there being a 999 club, like the people who have there'll only ever be 999 of these ENS names. And so it's like a really exclusive club, similar to driving not licenses, driving number plates. It's that similar kind of mindset where I just have the money to have this one particular thing, no one else can have it. And in the last week, 062, 046, 022 sold for 45 ETH, 34 ETH, and 69 ETH, respectively. So that's approaching, well, anything between $50,000 and $100,000, which is pretty wild.
It really is wild. And I feel like
why did we not buy these?
We talked about the Arabic 999 Club. And you know what another thing is that we talked about? We talked about the pre-punk ENS domains. So basically there's the, pre-punk 1K and 10K club, which refers to ENS domains that have been registered before punks have been minted. And we were like, this could be a thing where people legit assign value to it because it's quote unquote historic. And I remember us talking about it, but we didn't act on it. And now I'm looking at the pre-punk 1K floor, which is 0.93 ETH. And I feel like one of the things that is driving this trend is certainly that ENS Vision, which is like the main platform to look at all different kind of clubs like the pre-punk, 999, Arabic, dictionary. What else is there? Palindromes, single ETH emojis, 4-letter dictionary. That, well, first of all, they help structure that and, come up with the floor prices, but that they're also a marketplace. You can now trade your domains on ENS as well. And on OpenSea, you just didn't have the option to go into that much detail and have an overview of the different collections. And I feel like that the sole existence of ENS Vision and that they're like doing a really good job with that helps driving the hype. Because if you don't have a sensible way to look for the cheapest pre-punk 10K club ENS to add to your collection, you're not going to invest hours to find the best deal on OpenSea. You want an easily accessible platform to do that.
I think that's completely right. Like the only reason this like we need things to be structured in our brains and be presented in a clear, accessible way. And by creating a 10K club or a 999 club or a 1K club, and I've seen, you just mentioned the palindromes club. So people need to understand, people are buying random, like 5 to 6 digit numbers, which are palindromes, and those have more value than random other sets of 5 or 6 digit numbers. Because, as you say, on the website, there is a place that you can go to see all the palindromes together. They're structured by price. You can see all the palindromes, and it's like, well, it didn't used to be something in your consciousness, but now it is, because it's been packaged in that way. However, having said all of that, I think that a lot of this stuff is not going to survive. I think maybe the most premium triple digit numbers will be quite a flex, and that will survive. But my take is palindromes, like, no one cares. Random 6 digit numbers, no one cares. 4 digit numbers, I don't think anyone cares. I think they care now because it's like, well, if I buy it, I'll be able to sell it for more.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like domains. Most domains, I mean, people didn't just start buying 123.com, did they? Maybe, but again, 123.com, maybe that would be a very valuable domain. But 467983.com,
Yeah.
I mean, it might be valuable to someone if that's your like address code or something, but it's not valuable on a large scale basis. So I think people have lost the plot a little bit here.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think no one's going to be like, this is the floor for 6 digit domains or whatever. But I do have a question, to the English teacher in you, so to speak. I had a look at, there's the collection of both English verbs and English nouns. And I wanted to ask you, what has the higher floor? Do you think, is it more expensive to buy a verb or to buy a noun?
I think nouns would be higher.
Nouns did higher volume, that is true. But actually the floor for verbs is a bit higher. But verbs are doing good. Like verbs did plus 5,200% in the last 24 hours in terms of volume. So people are buying verbs. I mean, verbs are cheap. It's 0.025. But there's an increasing...
Are all of the verbs done? All English verbs have been
I don't know, but like, if I
just get the dictionary out and sit here this afternoon and just mint some verbs.
Should
we do that?
Like, I'm pretty certain that someone did that, to be honest.
Maybe go in the Discord and just get a dictionary out and just start minting verbs. Just pick a book and just... Should we just pick a book from our, like...
Yeah, I mean, the cheapest verb you can get is acclimate.eth, which is 0.025, and then the floor price really starts to increase for that. And it's 0.033, and it goes up. Whereas the cheapest noun is temporariness at 0.021. It's so random. It's so random. But again, it is the top 15 and 16 collection on ENS Vision. It gets exposure on the front page, and people are like, yeah, maybe buy a verb. And I feel like did we have the same kind of craze with domains that people just started to mint the dictionary?
I don't know, to be honest. I didn't participate in it. I know that there was a boom around it, but I think this must go down as being in a similar bucket. Although now that you say it, the verbs sound kind of better. Like temporariness sounds rubbish. Like, you shouldn't buy that. But acclimate, it could be like a brand. Could be.
Would you feel better identified by 53947 ETH or by acclimate.eth?
Well, maybe neither, but I could maybe think of a use for acclimate.eth if, I don't know, it sounds like a company potentially.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Whereas 53974. I just don't know what that's for. I don't know. I guess we haven't really fully figured out how these things get integrated into our ecosystem yet. I know that we can use them as addresses and we can send funds to each other, but what if there was a way, and I think this does exist to some degree, if it became a messaging service where you could get hold of people, and then in that case, it's like, well, having a number, is that better? But I think that's taking the old world and transposing it into this one.
Yeah, and that's not going to work because
the whole point is we don't need a number. You have your name.
And, all like special characters. You just don't want to be like, just try to find the right name for an emoji. It's not going to work. It's, as you said, we can't translate the old world into the new world in terms of adding context and chatting people.
Yeah. So say you were even going to send me a message via ENS. You wouldn't want to look me up by a number. What would be the point?
Yeah.
You'd look me up by my name, because in the same way an email address is with your name, not a number. So we're moving away from numbers. Like phone numbers, I guess, will be in the future will be like, what? You sat and typed a number into a thing? Like people won't even know what numbers are because it will just be like internet based.
But what's interesting with, and I feel like in particular with ENS, because it's so big and there's like so many categories that seem to be trending, is like to look how all of these subcategories and hype around certain things in the space is created and who is driving that. For example, I had a look at, are you aware of the 0x99 club? So it's basically 0x and then just any 2-digit numbers, 00, 01, 002, up to 99. And it has a 7 ETH floor. Like I get the 0x part because it's how wallet addresses start. But like, it's how did the hive mind or the bubble arrive to the conclusion that putting 0x and 2 numbers together is so valuable? It's so valuable that it means anything, and that someone pays not 7 ETH, pays 2 ETH for that. And that this collection trades, and it did 200 ETH in volume, and this is significant.
I mean, that's more than other collections, right? I completely agree. It's more interesting from a perspective of trying to figure out why and how people are how people are creating the narrative and then riding the narrative for as long as possible. I think it's more interesting to view these things from that perspective. I do think that the 3-digit stuff, it may potentially hold value, but the rest of the stuff is pretty speculative.
Yeah, it's even more speculative than NFTs, because like with NFTs, I get the community, the visual identity, and the roadmaps that are being implemented. But there's not. Is there a 0x99 Discord where I can talk to my fellow 98 members or 99 members?
Probably.
It's not really as community driven as it's with NFTs. So it's either pure speculation or like, I see a community around. I probably see it with the 999 club, but don't tell me there's like the English verb Discord.
Well, even if there was, the question would be, well, would that make it any more valuable? And I think the answer to that would still be no, because
I agree. But this is my point. Like, what drives the value then, other than speculation? And I don't think there is anything driving the value other than speculation. And thus, I agree. It is very short term. I don't think in the next bull run the demand for English verbs is going to be higher.
I agree. Something which is, moving from 3 digits to 6 digits, a collector very recently called The Real GVG purchased a 6-figure Alpha Centauri Kid art piece for actually $300,000. And then he proceeded to burn the piece. Why, you might ask? He decided to burn it 15 minutes after they bought it because the artist dared someone to buy it and burn it. you can see the tweet here. Alpha Centauri Kid had tweeted a photo of the piece of art and said, just listed this for 201 ETH, which is approximately $300,000, as a one of one. Dare someone to buy it and burn it. The real GVG arrived very soon after, bought it for 201 ETH, and burned it 15 minutes later. For people who don't understand, burning an NFT, you can just send anything that you own on the blockchain to a burn address, and it just gets destroyed, essentially. So this is pretty wild. We were talking about this a little bit before, and you thought it was a stunt. I don't think it was a stunt because the guy has a legit collection of other like really nice stuff, Xcopy and all sorts of other cool stuff in there. But still pretty wild. What do you think of this kind of artistic endeavor and collective behavior?
I think it's probably not too uncommon. Like we've seen that kind of, things happening in the real art world. I don't know if it's a stunt. I don't know if Alpha Centauri is going to follow up and there's going to be something as a second act of the story to be told. What happens to the collector who burned that is something that just this one tweet basically, and just daring to someone to see if they do it, or is this along a story? Like I'm thinking along the lines of how Pac used to create these narratives around burning NFTs, and then this happens, and then that happens, and so on. And so I don't know if this is a single off action, or can we expect more to come from it? It's going to be interesting to watch, but I have no clue.
I don't think so. I mean,
you think that was the whole story?
Definitely might be the case. It looks like it. I mean, there didn't appear to be anything connected to it. I know he did an open edition on the back of this, and he sold a few thousand copies that looked very, very similar, if not exactly the same, for 0.069 ETH. But I mean, I don't think that was hugely linked to this, or maybe it was. I think it might have been the case that if you burned this, then he would do the open edition. But either way, like I kind of don't get it, because he sold something for loads, and if someone burns it, then he gets to sell more for loads.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. You said this is something that happens in the art world, not uncommonly. Like, is this something
destroy
that
art as part of the art installation? Or I don't know, Banksy, when he auctioned off the piece that upon the auction finished was sliced up in thin little stripes. Like, destruction of artwork as part of the artwork is a process that has been part of art history for a very long time, I'd argue. But I feel like there's more you could do around the subject of burning NFTs with the opportunities that you have in Web3. Like I remember, I think it was Too Much Lag who once had that artwork that there was a special burn mechanism for it, and if you burnt it, first of all changed its visual appearance, but it also unlocked the Bitcoin that was locked in the artwork. So it basically could buy it as a real store of value for Bitcoin. And if you are like, okay, Bitcoin has reached such an massive amount of value, or want to redeem that Bitcoin that's locked within the artwork, you have to destroy the artwork. And I was like, this is a nice narrative. And there's a bit of tech going on. There's a nice story around it. So this is like, when it's just burning for burning's sake, I feel that you could do more with it. And I have, as I said, I have no idea with that story in particular. So this is why I'm on the sidelines and waiting to see if there's more to come.
Yeah, I agree. I like the idea of burning for some particular reason, as part of some kind of ongoing narrative, ongoing story. But burning just to throw something in the bin, whether that's by the artist themselves or by the collector, I can see why you would think, is this a publicity stunt? Like, because it didn't seem to serve a bigger reason. But people can do whatever they like, and it generated a lot of headlines. We're talking about it, and I think it's actually a cool piece of art. So it's a shame that it got burned. However, as you
one more quick side
mentioned,
note on that, because you said people can do whatever they want. This is what I once did. There was a 5 of 5 edition of an artist, George Boyer, that I really liked and still like. And I collected all 5 pieces and burned 4 of them because I wanted to make it 1 of 1 because I liked it so much.
Yeah, that's also a whole debate as to whether people think that is okay. Do you need to ask the artist? Is it fine for you as a collector to buy a bunch and burn the thing? It's a whole new dynamic, which I guess in a way that's possible in the real art world too. I haven't necessarily heard of that happening, but if you knew that there were X number of editions of something, you could just go around and buy all of them and get rid of all of them. But yeah, super, super interesting. There is an open edition available at a pretty reasonable price. So that's pretty cool. Switching gears a little bit, moving away from the art world and into the sports arena, I thought this announcement from the NBA was pretty interesting. So the NBA have announced a multi-year partnership with Sorare, and the NBA have plans to build an NFT-based fantasy basketball game. They've already, as many of us know, because lots of people were onboarded into the NFT ecosystem via NBA Top Shot, which was released on Flow, when you could buy and sell NBA moments from your favorite players as the season progressed. And they also released a different project not too long ago, which has promptly not done particularly well. But I think it seems like these sporting leagues and players see the value in fantasy sport and NFTs. What do you think? So there's 2 questions. There's 2 things to talk about here. One, from the business side, NBA like trying out a bunch of NFTs and now shifting again to Sorare, and then the fantasy element. So let's speak about the first bit first. What do you think of them releasing a bunch on Top Shot, then another collection, and now moving to Sorare?
There's 2 perspectives to be had on that. Like, personal perspective, as someone who collected NBA Top Shot from the very, very early days on, I would rather the NBA focuses on one NFT project and builds a game around NBA Top Shot rather than partnering up with Sorare for that thing. But the other perspective there is obviously the NBA's perspective, being a global multi-billion-dollar brand, and they are, going into this new Web3 world. And they're probably at a very early stage still, where they're spraying paint on the wall and see what sticks, and partnering up with multiple teams and blockchains and just explore and see what's going to work. So I absolutely understand the business perspective on their end to do this partnership. I don't know what the reaction in the Top Shot community was, if it alienated people or if they will try to build some kind of link or rewards for Top Shot collectors. Would also like to explore the Sorare partnership that I'm not aware of, but I do get the general, business reasoning behind that cooperation.
Yeah, I think it's completely fine. I think it's fine for companies to release a bunch of stuff in a new industry and then pivot aggressively towards other things. Does that mean that all the people who had bought the previous stuff get screwed? Very potentially. I don't think this means Top Shot goes away. Like, you can still collect those things if you want to collect them. But if you want to play the NBA Fantasy League game, you're just going to have to go somewhere else, because the moments weren't designed with a fantasy league game in mind. So it's a distinct digital product. Who's to say that any sports league should be limited to one digital product? You can't just take your one offering and then put it into every single niche, one for a fantasy game, one for some other game that you might want to create. These are going to be distinct things. They're huge organizations. So I think it's fine. People might get screwed in terms of an investment perspective, but this is just the reality of being in a very nascent market where we are starting from scratch and trying to see what works. Thinking about it from the fantasy angle, Sorare has been quite successful, and you said you've already been in it. Why do you think that it's a good use case for sports? And just explain a little bit about how it's already worked for football.
I think fantasy leagues are successful for, so I don't know like how big they are in Europe. I know it's a massive thing in the US, and this is how I first got in touch with them. But I think it's getting more popular in Europe as well. And it's just another way as a fan to really engage with the teams that you like or with the players that you like and build, teams that couldn't exist in that form in the real world, have your own leagues, compete with friends. So if you are passionate about soccer, passionate about basketball or any other sport, and you just want to do, like, this was my, train of thought, like, and you have friends who share the same interest, you could, go to a game, watch it with them. You could stay at home and watch the game. It's obviously something that people, millions of people do. But if you want to have like more exposure to that, and also, have that talk of who's the best player, what would be the best team, why would I manage this team better, and, basically prove the talk, I feel like fantasy leagues serve that purpose perfectly, and it makes sense for them to be reflected in the world of Web3 and NFTs. And Sorare is, I think Sorare is successful. I mean, obviously it started with football as a French startup, but they also extended with the MLB, Major League Baseball, I think with individual clubs as Milan as well. The Spanish La Liga is part of Sorare, so they are also, branching out into different sports and leagues and categories.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a huge use case, and I think people are starting to realize that if we just pump a whole bunch of NFTs into an ecosystem with nothing to do with them, then this is all going to go very bad for everyone. And having them linked to a fantasy game just it gives the NFTs a reason for existing, which currently for most NFTs doesn't exist. And so it feels, particularly for sport, like a really, really natural progression and natural fit. Like, look, let's have the NFT, make it a part of, this broader game that you're playing. That means you have a reason to hold it or keep it or trade it. Because at the moment, everyone's just trading stuff on the hope that something goes up more than another. So I think it makes a lot of sense. I'm not super familiar with Sorare because I haven't been using it, but I know a little bit about it. I always thought it was quite confusing how they had some teams signed up with them and some teams weren't signed up with them. And I didn't quite understand how the whole dynamic worked. It would be cool for just one whole league, like the NBA, to sign up completely so everyone is in there, and then you've got the full selection, and so you can kind of properly track a season and go after it like that. So I think that would be really good. But in general, yeah, I think fantasy is the way to go for these sports teams.
Yeah, another thing that I'm, also curious about is, and I did a bit of research because I remembered it like from the back of my head, but it was too old of a news to be able to, cite it properly, was the Top Shot. I was back in October 2020, actually. They were talking about building their own game. Hardcourt, it was named at the time, which Roham then said it's a 3D game where you control players on a basketball court, blah, 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 blah. And if you have a bunch of LeBron dunks, you can train your Steph Curry to be as good at dunking as LeBron by equipping him with a lot of LeBron moments. So I did like this idea, especially, seeing the vast number of Top Shot moments that is out there to gamify that. And I even wouldn't be surprised if we're going to see multiple NFT games around the same league. Because as you said, why limit it to one digital product? It's not like the NBA or any other major league is doing the same with, real world analog offerings. They have so many and an incredible plethora of licensing deals going on. So especially at that early stage, it just doesn't make sense to limit yourself to one offering.
So what happened to that game? Nothing.
I don't know. No, it's not there. I don't know if they cancel it in the meantime or not, because I stopped following Top Shot so closely as I used to follow it. I didn't find any recent news, but I remembered it and just want to look it up to see if it's just me fantasizing or if it actually was a real thing that people talked about back in the day.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? I wonder how many plans or fantasies of project leaders and founders and communities people now need to check, was that all a dream? Did this really happen? Did we really say we were going to do something, or did we really plan to do something, or did we say something officially? Because people another 2 or 3 months pass, and then you look back at your plans and your thoughts and your aspirations, and you just think, well, that was a terrible idea, or we have made zero progress on that, or now the whole market has changed and that has made everything that we've suggested seem completely stupid or irrelevant. So yeah, very, very tough for people to try to put into practice long standing plans.
Yeah, that, and particularly when it comes to gaming, because I feel like still so many teams underestimate how long it takes to build a game, and just putting, we are building a game on your roadmap, and that's not, in any way fronting NBA Top Shot, because they have completely different resources. I'm certain they're building a lot of stuff in the background, but I'm talking about, the typical NFT project that comes out and says they're building a fully fledged game around that collectible. It's not a very realistic thing to have.
Indeed. So I think that wise point on things taking time can be a reasonable place to end this week. Things take time, guys. Let's be patient. Let's keep going. And see you next week. Good stuff, mate.
See you next week. Your transitions have been on point. And so was the finishing note.
Amazing.
All right. Take care.
See you later. Bye-bye.